June 6, 1944. Allied infantry and armored divisions start to land on the French Normandy shore. This biggest seaborne invasion of history represents a turning point in world conflict II and starts the end of the conflict in Europe. The first significant Nazi camp discovered in German-occupied Poland, Majdanek, is freed by the Soviet forces on the next month in July 1944. Only if the concentration camps are freed will the whole scope of Nazi atrocities become fully visible to the world. Only a tiny fraction of concentration camp prisoners survive due to the rigors of forced work and food shortage. Months and years of cruelty and torture add to their resemblance to skeletons, and many of them are so feeble they can hardly move at all. Ilse Koch is among the most notorious agents of this evil Nazi government in charge of these crimes. Born Margarete Ilse Köhler in Dresden, then under the German Empire, on September 22, 1906, Ilse Koch was the third daughter of a foreman. She attended primary and commercial schools, and in 1920s she worked as a secretary and bookkeeping clerk for different businesses. 1 year before Adolf Hitler took office, in 1932, Ilse had registered with the Nazi Party. Adolf Hitler's vision of a perfect Aryan society revolved heavily on women, like Ilse. Hitler appreciated women for their biological strength as generators of the race as well as for their activity inside the Nazi movement. According to Nazi doctrine, a more sizable, more racially pure population would improve Germany's military might and supply colonists for occupied Eastern European land. Aggressive population policies of the Third Reich urged racially pure women to have as many children as they could. When SS officials developed the state-directed program known as Lebensborn, meaning fount of life, in 1936, Nazi population policy underwent a radical swing. Lebensborn regulation stipulated that every SS member should father 4 children either in or out of marriage. Lebensborn homes hired adoptive parents for the children, kept single moms protected with their children, supplied birth records and financial support. Ultimately, though, the Lebensborn initiative was never pushed vigorously, and only roughly 7,000 children were born into the Lebensborn families over the program's 9-year lifespan. Nazi population policy, then, focused on marriage and the family. Through marriage loans, the state promoted matrimony. It distributed family income supplements for every additional child, it publicly praised child-rich households, it awarded the Cross of Honor of the German Mother to women bearing 4 or more children, it penalized abortion. German women, however, were instrumental in the Nazi movement, far more so than the propaganda produced by the Nazi Party, which essentially defined a woman's function as mothers and childbearing housekeepers. Of the 40 million German women living in the Reich, some 13 million were employed in Nazi Party organizations acting as welfare workers, teachers, secretaries, nurses, auxiliaries in the armed forces and police, and in many other roles including guards in concentration camps. A minority of German women who opposed the policies of the government or were declared physiologically inferior suffered. Tens of thousands more were imprisoned in the camp system and hundreds of thousands were forced sterilized. Sachsenhausen concentration camp was part of that camp system. In 1936 Ilse married Karl Otto Koch, the commander. The main concentration camp for the Berlin area, the SS set up the Sachsenhausen concentration camp in July 1936. Early on in the camp's history, police and SS imprisoned into Sachsenhausen mostly political opponent and actual or suspected criminals. The camp housed 1,600 people at the end of 1936. Ilse Koch was a guard and secretary working in a campsite. Karl Otto was tasked in August 1937 to construct a brand new concentration camp at Buchenwald. Ilse was dreaded for her cruelty while he was well known for his personal avarice in the camps he worked in. One of the biggest concentration camps created inside German territory was Buchenwald. Prisoners resided in the Buchenwald main camp surrounded by watchtowers, an electric barbed wire fence, and a chain of sentries furnished with automatic machine guns. Prisoners who disobeyed camp rules were disciplined and frequently tortured to death at the infamous punishment block known as the bunker near the main camp entrance. Apart from the punishment block, the main camp consisted in 33 wooden barracks, buildings for disinfection, a brothel, and a cremation. Political prisoners, those arrested for some kind of political opposition to the Nazi government, comprised most of the early detainees at Buchenwald. Apart from the political detainees and Jews, Buchenwald inmates comprised serial offenders, Jehovah's Witnesses, Sinti, Roma people, German military deserters. Ilse got known as the witch at Buchenwald. Tattoos consumed her, and she used to ride her horse across the Buchenwald searching for tattooed inmates. She would carve out the area of their skin where the tattoo was found, then send them to their death when she discovered one but before they were burnt and died. She spoke of these bits of skin as her trophies. She would then go on to gather gloves, a handbag, book covers, and lampshades all fashioned of human skin. She told Dr. Erich Wagner, supposedly her boyfriend, her preoccupation with tattoos and her search for the link between tattoos and criminal inclinations. She used to beat pregnant ladies with whip along the whole length of which razor bits were inserted, even though she had 3 of her own children and loathed them. Koch also enjoyed punishing children prisoners. She would laugh loudly at witnessing them heading to the gas chambers. She also belonged to a sexual deviance. She not only planned several orgies with SS men and their spouses but also made male prisoners rape female inmates in front of her. She delighted in strolling around the camp half-naked or in minimal clothing, encouraging inmates to stare her in the eye. When they did, the soldiers grabbed them and fired straight in the head. She was also said to have liked sexually degrading the sex-starved captives and had commanded them to serve her while she was nude. But after the war, Ilse Koch presented herself as a devoted SS wife, mother, holiday taker, caregiver, and horseback rider. Josias Waldeck, the higher SS and police leader for Weimar, took notice of Buchenwald concentration camp in 1941 and in this capacity had supervising power over Buchenwald. Looking over the death list for the camp, Waldeck stumbled onto the name Walter Kramer, a head hospital orderly at Buchenwald whom he knew had past success treating him. Investigating the matter, Waldeck found that Karl Otto Koch had ordered both Kramer and Karl P., a hospital attendant, executed as political prisoners because of their syphilis treatment. One fact Koch had wanted to keep hidden. Waldeck also heard accounts of a certain prisoner being shot trying to flee. Koch had been moved to the Majdanek concentration camp in German-occupied Poland by then, but Ilse still belonged to the Buchenwald and slept at the commandant's residence in the camp. Waldeck got a full-scale camp probe authorized. The prisoner who had been shot while trying to escape was found to have been instructed to obtain water from a well some distance from the camp and had subsequently been shot from behind as he had also helped to treat Koch for syphilis. One among those dead was an SS guy called Köhler. German physician Waldemar Hoven killed him after conducting medical studies on camp prisoners about typhus and the tolerance of serums including phenol and Nevapan. Since Ilse's boyfriend Hover was a possible witness for Koch's investigation, he shot Köhler with phenol. More of Karl Koch's orders to kill prisoners at the camp were exposed throughout the inquiry, as well as evidence of embezzlement of items taken from prisoners, thanks which in May 1940 he had an indoor riding arena built for himself and his wife Ilse costing over 250,000 Reichsmarks. Karl Koch also opened Swiss bank accounts with funds taken from inmates and purchased a nice automobile. Karl Otto was charged with both embezzlement and the unapproved murder of 3 convicts. Ilse was accused of embezzlement of about 700,000 Reichsmarks. The Koch's demise was certain when it was discovered they had acquired vast fortune using the gigantic Nazi machinery, since all the items taken from killed Jews was regarded as Reich property. Ilse was cleared for lack of proof, but on April 5, 1945 Karl Otto Koch was executed by firing squad. April 1945 saw the liberation of Koch's Buchenwald camp, site of his horrors. Using a covert shortwave transmitter and modest generator, Buchenwald camp inmates on April 8, 1945 broadcast the Morse code message to the Allies. For the Army under General Patton. This is the Buchenwald concentration camp. SOS is here. We ask for assistance. They want us to leave. The SS intend to wipe us out. Desperate inmates get the note, hold out 3 minutes after the transmission. Hurrying to get to your side. 3rd Army Staff. 3 days later, on April 11th, the U.S. 6th Armored Division freed Buchenwald and discovered more than 20,000 frail and emaciated survivors. They survived since the Gestapo did not know that the officials had already fled, and a prisoner answered the phone informing headquarters that explosives would not be needed, as the camp had already been blown up, which was not true. When Gestapo headquarters at Weimar phoned the camp administration to announce that it was sending explosives to blow up any evidence of the camp, including its inmates, the Gestapo did not know that the camp administration had already fled, and a prisoner answered the phone informing headquarters that it was sending. General Patton ordered the mayor of the nearby city of Weimar to bring 1,000 people to Buchenwald to be shown the cremation and other proof of Nazi atrocities after his tour of the camp. Rather than discounting Nazi crimes as atrocity propaganda, the Americans sought to make sure the German people would answer for them. Many of them were crying, some of them even passed out upon seeing the dead bodies, starved survivors behind barbed wire fences, as well as a table display of paintings on human skin, lampshade made of human skin, various parts of the human body preserved in alcohol, and 2 heads which were shrunk to 1/5 their natural size. Part of her family lived in Ludwigsburg, where Ilse Koch spent the last months before the war's end. Her relatives tried to take her custody from the children, but because of her lifestyle marked by sexual and alcohol excesses, this happened only after she had been arrested by the U.S. authorities in late June 1945. Later, Ilse Koch was prosecuted at the Buchenwald trial, which started on April 11, 1947, in the internment camp of Dachau, where the former concentration camp had been housed until late April 1945. Among the 31 defendants, Ilse Koch was the only female one. Koch denied both knowing about the starving and medical tests conducted on many detainees and being involved in any kind of knowing of the mistreatment and murder of camp inmates during the trial. Her lies, nonetheless, did not enable her to flee justice. Koch was in the advanced stages of pregnancy, however, when the sentences were handed down on August 14, 1947. This is supposed to have spared her from the death sentence applied to 22 of her 30 co-defendants. She was sentenced to life in jail. Her son Uwe was born October 1947 while she was under arrest. Uwe's father was yet another German intern. Her sentence was first commuted to 4 years, but following a national uproar she was promptly charged by a German court for instigation of murder in 135 cases. Beginning on November 27, 1950, the second trial ran 7 weeks and heard 250 witnesses, including 50 for the defense. Koch fell and needed to be taken from court in late December 1950 and once more in January 1951. At least 4 witnesses for the prosecution claimed to have witnessed Koch choose tattooed inmates, who were subsequently slain, or having seen or been involved in the process of creating human skin lampshades from tattooed skin. Ilse Koch was absent from court when the court decided in a 111-page ruling sentence awarding her life imprisonment on January 15, 1951. The Bavarian Ministry of Justice turned down each of her repeated pleas for a pardon. The only son of Ilse and Karl Koch, Artwin, killed himself in 1967, unable to live with the guilt of his parents' misdeeds. His mother was having hallucinations at this period and had grown concerned that survivors of concentration camps would mistreat her in her cell. She also reported that dead Buchenwald inmates approached her across the fences and insisted on having their flesh returned. Mentally sick Ilse Koch killed herself soon after her son Artwin on September 1, 1967. After hanging herself with a bedsheet, she was buried in an unidentified tomb at 60 years old. No one shed tears for Ilse Koch. Thank you for viewing the World History Channel. See you next time on the channel.